Yesterday in the show, we talked quite a bit about the Antifa, left-wing Antifa thug group that had engaged in extreme violence in protests in Portland and had also threatened that they're going to engage in actually throwing acid in people's faces at an upcoming free speech rally in Washington. Antifa, left-wing group, very violent, very, very extreme. And simply their message is no one in America is allowed to talk about anything or hold any view or stand up in any march for any view that we do not accept. The word ironic doesn't begin to capture how absurd. They took their name Antifa because they say they're standing for anti-fascism. They are the anti-fascists, and they're among the most fascist left-wing organizations in America. These are leftists who do not like free speech, do not like to let others engage in the speech that they think they should get to engage in. Well, there was a great piece. I just wanted to do a little add-on to yesterday's story. Part of what Antifa does to get away with the conduct they do is to wear masks. You'll see many, many protests where the Antifa thugs, criminals, have covered their face. They have either a whole face covering or a mask, just their eyes showing, and they have something covering their faces entirely. And one of the suggestions was, why don't organizations or cities and counties and state governments around the country pass a law essentially saying you must remove a mask if the police tell you to, that you do not have the right necessarily to be in public wearing a mask. And it turns out there was a case involving the Ku Klux Klan, another left-wing violent terrorist group in this country. Again, Ku Klux Klan formed by the Democrats, engaging in unspeakable violence, covering their heads, covering their whole bodies, covering their faces. Antifa does this kind of same thing as Ku Klux Klan did. They're both left-wing groups, they're both hate groups, they both are intolerant of anyone who won't agree with them, and they both cover their faces and engage in violence. Well, it turns out there was a case, and I actually think that we should talk about a tiny bit with respect to the First Amendment, because this is a great idea for at least local communities, cities and counties, and maybe nationwide, a movement to say that, number one, the police can tell anyone, remove that mask immediately, and that the person can be arrested for not doing it. Because part of what these cowards are doing, of course, is they're evading capture, evading arrest, because they hide their faces. So it's very, very hard. In Portland right now, as a matter of fact, the police have managed to identify one person in that entire thug protest by Antifa. They've identified one person. So I just thought this was a very interesting case, and this was a case called Church of the, it involved a protest where people were wearing Ku Klux Klan masks, and New York had an anti-mask law that made some of these people unwilling to participate in rallies. And so the argument was, I want to just make these two clear points about how right it is for jurisdictions to consider passing laws saying, you have to take that mask off. And frankly, you would like to have people at these marches be able to pull the mask off someone's face to take their picture. This is why these people keep the mask on, so no one ever knows who they are. But the two arguments that the court considered, I want to share with you. One was the argument by the Ku Klux Klan was, well, we have this mask, our whole getup is part of our free speech. It is a form of speech in choosing how we dress. And the court basically said, look, you wear your stupid long white gowns, you wear the hat thing. You know what? You don't need the mask. It's not the only way in which you can communicate. You don't have to have your face covered. The second argument that the Ku Klux Klan made was, well, on the other hand is, what about the right of free speech anonymously? Why don't we have the right, or shouldn't the right of free speech include the right to speak anonymously? And so we want to cover ourselves because we don't want people to know who we are. That was also rejected by the court, which said essentially, yeah, maybe there is in some abstract way, there's a time when we would agree that the First Amendment does protect anonymous speech. You can hide your identity. But given the situation, the purpose of hiding your identity, committing crime, committing violence, and then trying to evade detection, no, you don't have that First Amendment right to we're not going to extend the First Amendment to protect your right to wear a mask when your purpose is to evade detection. So it's a little add-on. Yesterday's violence, I mean, this weekend's violence in Portland, I told you just one story involving this is a guy named, last name is NGO, pronounced No, Andy No. He's a journalist. He's Asian, and he's been very outspoken writing about both the dangers of Islam and the dangers of Antifa, exposing them as the thug group that they are. And so he was among the ones attacked, but it turned out there were other attacks in Portland, same day, same protest, other side of the big town square. I didn't go into those, and I think the details probably are not worth reviewing in this show, but I do want to make clear that this Antifa mindset is the notion that they have the right to threaten others, to attack people for, and in this particular case in Portland, it was a right-wing group that was marching, and I don't know, it's called Proud Boys. I'm not actually sure what they stand for, except to say I think they probably have some pretty extreme views, but they were not instigators. They were doing their march, which they're permitted to do. This idea that Antifa is embracing and trying to sell to America is they get to shut down speech they don't like. They get to engage in violence to shut down speech they don't like. They get to engage in violence, hide their identities, never be accountable to shut down speech they don't like. And they are on the move. This is a left-wing movement in this country, very dangerous, very symbolic of the attitude of the American left. Utter intolerance for anyone who will not agree with the views they hold. So these are the remaining Antifa rages in Portland. I mean, I could go on and on describing, but this is this Proud Boys group that is the right-wing group that the Antifa group are fighting, have numerous marches coming up. So probably haven't heard the last of this story.